Hello everyone. We are back after a couple of weeks. YouTube, we are back. I'm Martin and welcome to Yes, I'm a Designer. As I mentioned in the comments below, I have a very special guest with me today. She's
Hi,
my wife.
everyone.
She's my wife, Shumi, and she's also a designer. She has been designing for around 5-6 years, and you are completely self-taught.
Yes, I probably 6 years ago I had no idea what Photoshop was or InDesign or Illustrator. Then I started teaching myself, and for the last 5 years I was mainly working as an in-house designer, and now I am freelancing and working for Yes, I'm a Designer.
Cool. And what we are going to do today, just so you know what this stream is going to be about, we will be talking about the differences and the similarities between Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, the three most important tools for graphic designers and creatives in general. So I just want to check before we go any further that the sound and the video quality is good. So if you can just let us know whether it's all good and you can hear us, see us fine. So we will be spending probably half of the time today to talking about theory, and then the other half I'm going to show you an actual project. So we will be putting together something which I've roughly planned, but again I will improvise a bit, similarly to what we've done last time in the poster design when Emily was here with me. So I can see that all good, right?
Yeah,
Everyone's
all good.
saying it's all fine. So hopefully there won't be any technical issues. If there's any problem, just let us know in the chat. Shumi is going to keep an eye on the chat for me while I'm presenting to you. So before I go any further, let me just switch on to my screen, and also let's set this up like that. All right, so what you see is InDesign right now. I will start with a quick presentation, and I won't waste much time on this, but I wanted to also mention that this presentation and all the exercise files I'm going to use in this session, you will be able to download if you support me on Patreon. So Patreon is a website which I can show you later on, where you can find additional exercise files and assets that can be useful when you watch these streams that we are doing. And this stream that we are currently doing, I already have all the assets uploaded on Patreon, so you can check it out yourself. Just look for Yes, I'm a Designer on Patreon, and we actually have the link in the description as well to the Patreon site, so you can check that out. Now, the topic is, as I said, choosing the right tool, which is a difficult one. It's probably anyone who's starting out going to face, and you will probably also be asked at interviews whether you are strong at certain tools like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, which one is your strongest. And it's hard to say which one is most important for a certain job. So that's what I would like to help you on explaining today. So I am going to start off by showing you Photoshop, and let me just put this into full screen so hopefully you can see everything from this. I created this presentation to make sure that it's like print friendly, because it's a downloadable PDF on Patreon that you can use as well if you want to keep this on your desk or put it on your wall. It's going to give you a really good reminder of deciding how to start a project and which tools you should work with. So I'm not going to go through this because you can read it yourself, but the way I organize this PDF is that I have on the left side what an application, the current application, is useful for. So like Photoshop is useful for retouching photos, correcting the colors of images, and so on and so forth. Then I also have avoid it for. Now this is something that happens sometimes, that an illustrator would create things in Photoshop, or someone would start a logo design project in Photoshop, and so on and so forth. There can be overlaps between these applications, and that's not a big mistake if you use let's say, Photoshop for something that can be better done in Illustrator, but there's certain tasks like the ones here I mentioned in this list that is best to do in these applications. So like Photoshop is not for logo design. Okay, so the avoid it for list is quite important. It's good to remember that. The important unique features you can see as another list. Although all of these applications have loads of features in them, I listed here the most important unique features which you won't find in the other applications. So you won't find adjustment layers in Illustrator or in InDesign. So for these you have to go to Photoshop. Or also you won't find healing and cloning tools in the other two applications. That's Photoshop that you need to use for that. And then I also listed on the right side the primary tool for certain design roles or creative roles, like retouchers would use Photoshop as their primary tool. And then photographers in combination with Lightroom, they would also use it as their primary tool, and so on and so forth. Now, just as an example, I don't know when you worked, Shumi, as an in-house designer, let's say at Tony and Guy. As an in-house designer, was Photoshop the main tool that you used, or?
I think it varied. As you said, if we were to color correct images or make any tweaks to the image itself, we would probably use Photoshop. Whereas if we had to put a campaign together or a magazine, we will switch to InDesign. But I think all of them were used for its own special way, but for mainly image retouching, we would use Photoshop.
Yeah. So it really varies. Some jobs you would be asked to use Photoshop a lot, and you would probably spend 80-90% of your time in there, if any of these jobs are what you are doing. So if you're a retoucher, obviously 90% probably of the time you will be in Photoshop. But then if you are more into, let's say, logo design, you would probably spend more time in Illustrator, and so on and so forth. Let me just switch on to Illustrator so you can see that we have a list for this as well. So of course, for logo designers, illustrators, pattern designers, and fashion designers, Illustrator is the primary tool. And what we have unique here is that Illustrator, compared to Photoshop, is an object-based application. So here you don't even have to create layers, although you have layers. You don't have to create layers because all the elements that you create will automatically be objects. And I will show you this once we switch on to the actual applications and show you the real project that we will be working on. So being object-based, Illustrator is an advantage, I would say, over Photoshop. But Photoshop, of course, allows you still to work non-destructively, having layers in it. So it's just a difference between them that it's worth mentioning. And there's also, of course, the very important advantage in Illustrator. It is that it is a resolution independent workflow that you do there, which means that everything or almost everything is vector based. So nothing will be pixelated while you are working. And on the opposite side, Photoshop is mainly working with raster images or pixel images. So that's a big difference between the two. And the third one in the list is InDesign, which is actually the youngest one out of all three of them. You probably noticed that I have the date in which they were first introduced, and Photoshop is 1988, Illustrator is 1987, and then InDesign is 1999. So that's the most recent addition out of these three in the Adobe package. But obviously that was already 18 years history. So it became the industry leading application in page layout and design. And this is a very, very important tool in the creator's tool set, because I would say this is important, this InDesign is the primary tool for graphic designers. And a lot of people won't dare say that, or even like in tutorials, they wouldn't really emphasize that. Everyone is saying that you must know Photoshop, you must know Illustrator.
Yeah.
But do you agree that InDesign is the most important one?
I definitely agree. Having come from an in-house design role, 90% of our collaterals were created using InDesign. As I mentioned, we use Illustrator to create vectors or elements, and we use Photoshop to tweak images. However, both elements from Photoshop or Illustrator were taken into InDesign, where we created the final composition. So it's definitely an important tool that you should master if you want to improve your career and definitely want to enhance your graphic design ability.
Yeah. So I can't emphasize this as more than really InDesign is so important. And I remember when I first started off, I was actually already teaching as a certified instructor Photoshop. And I think I also started teaching Illustrator, but first I started off teaching Photoshop. Even though I was already teaching it, I was really weak on InDesign. And I've learned InDesign later on, and then I became also an instructor later on. But that took me years to really master this application, because it's already, when it was first released, it was already a very robust and strong application with loads of features. And probably one of the best ways of showing you how strong this application is, a good comparison between the three of them, is that when you go to the window menu in any of the applications, so I'm in InDesign CC right now, you will find all the panels under the window menu. So at first glimpse, it looks like it's not that much. So if we compare it to, let's say, Illustrator, and I go to window menu, that seems to be much more. So it's a much more extensive list. But if I go to Photoshop again, we will see a fairly long list, around, 20, 25 panels we have. So each of these listed here are panels, and panels we use to access features. So obviously the more panels you have, that means that you have more options. And when we look at InDesign, it seems like that's the shortest list, but that's just the first point when you look at it. But when you hover over the groups, because here we actually have groups of panels, you will see that we actually have loads of more panels. Like under interactive, we have a whole other set of panels. Under output as well, we have plenty. Under styles, we have 5. Type and tables, again, another one. Utilities, another one. And I haven't actually counted this ever, but I know that InDesign has around twice as much panels than Photoshop. And it almost has as much panels as Photoshop and Illustrator combined. So it actually shows well how much options you have in these applications, in this application. And I would like to just ask you guys in the chat, you can tell us whether InDesign is something that you are strong on, or maybe what we can say is just write in the comment the strongest, which one is the strongest application out of the three. So which one you know the best, which one you are most confident in, or maybe which one out of the three of them you use the most often. So we will be able to see a little bit of a statistics. Obviously we can't count it properly, but everyone will be able to see this. And then I will just ask Shumi to maybe give me like a rough estimate of which one was the strongest one. We just wait a bit. Let's just get a couple of comments in. And it's just interesting to see.
Mainly Photoshop at the moment.
Mainly Photoshop. That's what I expected. And
Illustrator
is second probably.
I think one or two people commented and say InDesign, and majority is Photoshop.
Yeah. So there is also an interesting thing that on the web and YouTube, for example, if I don't know again statistics, but if we would look at the available tutorials and videos on these three applications, again Photoshop will outweigh by far the other two, and then probably Illustrator would be second, but still like probably 1 to 5 the relation between them. So there's at least 5 times more Photoshop, than maybe 10 times more than Illustrator, and then there's even less content on InDesign, I feel. And that is, I don't know, why do you think that is? because the demand is there. I teach these applications regularly, and I actually teach InDesign the most. So in classroom trainings, there's the highest demand for that. But why do you think on online there's less content?
Do you know what? I honestly think people think in order to get into design, you just have to learn Photoshop. Everything is Photoshop. When you hear about magazines, when you read, an article and you see an image of a celebrity retouched, everyone assumes it's photoshopped. And I don't know, I think Photoshop just has a bit more of it's known better than any other product, other softwares.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Photoshop in just general is just cool because you can very quickly create something that's visually like engaging, and you can impress people even just showing techniques. So it is an easy one to impress people with, while Illustrator and InDesign are a bit more technical, and you have to really understand how they work to be able to create something interesting with them. But I would argue that you can create just as amazing things with these two applications, or maybe even more than with Photoshop. So there's no difference in the quality of work that you can do. There's just difference in the style and the type of work you can do with them.
I think it might be good to ask people to, on the chat, say why they use Photoshop mainly. Because I can see that they're using Photoshop and Illustrator, but it'll be good to know what they're actually creating.
Sure. Yeah. So if you guys can tell us in the comments, so we can see that Photoshop is the most common out of all of you.
Why are they using it?
And then Illustrator comes second. InDesign is hardly there. Was there anyone saying InDesign is the strongest?
Like I said, there was probably 2-3 comments.
No problem. So that was probably the least strongest. And then as Shumi said, it would be interesting to see what you guys are doing, or so what are you using these applications for, and based on that we will be seeing, like, I can see painting, photo editing,
which is great.
Which for that Photoshop of course is the best. So I won't go back in the in this presentation, but as I said, if you want to get the PDF, you can find this on my Patreon site, and it will be something that will be probably useful for everyone to keep saved and refer back to. So I can see other comments are coming in, retouching, and then Illustrator for logos, Photoshop for websites, InDesign for brochures. That's great.
That's good.
And then I would like to move on to our next page. So here's a really interesting thing while we are getting the responses from you guys. I always like to show something more tangible, something more visible, through which we can see the difference between these applications. So we can see the difference on specific examples like typography. I chose typography and anything to do with typography because that can be done in all three of them, and it's something that unites them but still makes a difference between the three applications that we've been talking about. So if I go into Photoshop, there's a few examples here I collected from the web, and these are the type of designs that you should do in Photoshop if we are talking about mainly type heavy or type centered design. So photorealistic effects, textures, 3D type, text used for compositional element, and so on and so forth. These are the things that Photoshop is the best for. So you can see that we have a couple of very photorealistic effects like the burning text, the PSD burning text. It looks like lava or ashes. We have the neon light or the fluorescent light coming from the light box. We have the pop candy, which looks like honey or sweet, liquid sweet. Then we can also see the portrait on the right, which is something where the text is not really to read it, it's just to create the composition. And again, similarly to the departed poster on the top left or the Swan Lake, where the text is still legible, but it's creating the composition. It's used as either a holding device or as an interacting element with the photograph. So these are the type of things where Photoshop is great, and although Photoshop is not really for working with text, it's not for typesetting, but these type of realistic effects and 3D type and so on and so forth are best done in Photoshop. But now let's have a look at Illustrator. So Illustrator, again, is a brilliant tool to work with text. It probably has a bit even more options than Photoshop, but it's used for different things. So we would use it more for like digital hand lettering, custom fonts, illustrative characters like the A on the top right, or packaging, where again you have a lot of type, but you are using it to create packaging or icons or logos. So these are all best done in Illustrator. And hopefully you can see the difference between the two of them. So the type of typographic design you do in Photoshop and also the ones that we do in Illustrator, you should be able to tell the difference. And then if I switch to InDesign again, you will see the difference that here we are doing page layout, we are doing typesetting, threaded text across pages, text wrap, columns, drop caps, and so on and so forth. So this is where multi-page design work comes into play, and that's InDesign is best for that. Although Illustrator and Photoshop can also handle artboards, it's not the same as having pages and working with, let's say, master pages in InDesign. So even simple things as numbered pages, you won't be able to automate in the other applications. You have to use InDesign for that. So this again is just a simple comparison of these three, once again showing it to you: Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. So the three different examples on how we use these tools to work with text and type in general. And I would like to also mention that there are also common things between these applications. So that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people find it difficult to choose which tool to use for a certain task, because there's quite a lot of things that are overlapping and similar in them. So here's in this list you can see the similarities and the common ground between the three applications. So of course there's more, but these are probably the most relevant and most important ones. So just as an example, working with paths and drawing vector shapes with the pen tool is available in all three applications. Does it matter which one you use for, let's say, using the pen tool?
I think, like you said, they're all available in all application, and sometimes when you're using Photoshop to do web design, you might find it easier to use a pen tool to create rectangle boxes, and Illustrator pen tool is amazing, and InDesign I've used it a few times for clipping mask. But yeah, like I said, they're all it acts the same in all application.
Yes. So Adobe is actually doing a good job on tying together these applications as close as possible. I was toying with this idea, I don't know if I told you that, why, like a couple of years ago, why don't they just merge these three applications together into one, let's say, I don't know, Adobe Creative Hub or something?
Yeah, someone actually said that earlier on. Why don't Adobe merge all these applications?
Okay, so that
someone did the question.
So it's not only us who thought about this. I work for Adobe sometimes as a freelancer. I sometimes get to work with Adobe directly, and sometimes I even get to talk to developers working on these products. And I try to find out what their take on this, and there's several different reasons why they still keep it separate. One of the most important thing is because of the legacy of these products. So these are the most strongest and longest used products in design. So merging them together into one is a very difficult task, because you would have to make sure that all the previous users will find what they are looking for, and even individually they are huge. Imagine when you merge them together how massive it would be. It would be very difficult to find what you need to work with. So
crash your computer as well, probably.
Yeah, probably. But we never know. In the future we might see even more tight integrations between these applications. But even already now, one of the best feature I can mention for anyone who's already on Creative Cloud is the CC libraries. And I actually did a presentation 2 days ago in London on the Designers Fiesta about CC libraries and CC services in general, which the good news is the whole thing was recorded. So it should come soon onto the YouTube channel. I will upload it probably next week or the week after latest. It was a really cool presentation, around an hour long. So just keep tuned for that, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't done it already, because there's some great content that I was talking about on that event. So CC libraries is something that if you haven't started using already, make sure you do if you are on the Creative Cloud version, because they save so much time. I can't tell you how useful they are, and I'm planning to do maybe another live stream as well, specifically on CC libraries. But in the meantime, you will see that recorded session that I did on Friday. So I don't even want to spend more time on this, but I just wanted to mention that, of course, apart from the differences, there are similarities between these products. So it's just worth mentioning that. And then if I switch on to this, I think this is the last page. Here I just collected again all the points that I made throughout this presentation or throughout this document. So again, it's just a comparison of what you can use them for, what you should avoid them for, what's the important unique features, and where are they used as primary tools in the industry. Do we have any questions so far before I move on to the project?
There are a few questions. For instance, I can't pronounce her name, it's in Russian.
Yeah.
What's better for character illustration for children's book? Which application would you recommend? I would say Photoshop and Illustrator.
Yes, so let me give you guys a very good place to check what you should use. So probably all of you heard of Behance already. Behance was a separate company, and it was acquired by Adobe, I think, in 2014, and since then it's part of the Adobe Creative Cloud family. So this is the site where all creators publish their work, and you can find some amazing work here. And because it's tightly integrated with the Adobe ecosystem, you will actually be able to go under the Discover option, so behance.net, go to Discover and choose Creative Tools, and then you will be able to find a list of the most commonly used tools, Adobe tools in design, and then you will see the most recent popular projects published by creatives from around the world. So if you are looking for, let's say, illustration in children books and illustration in general, character illustration, then you will probably find that similar projects will come up mainly under Illustrator and also maybe under Photoshop. So we can see that here immediately there is an illustration project. Let's just have a look at this one. So the creator, Matt Greenhold, worked in Photoshop, so we can see that that was the tool used for this project, and then we can scroll down and we can see these illustrations. Now Shumi, if you look at these, why do you think it was Photoshop used for this and not Illustrator? What do you think made Matt use this? Because she prefers Photoshop, or because the style just better suited?
I think probably the style is a bit more hand drawn style, not vector. So I think for that case, probably Photoshop works better to give it a bit more raw look and feel.
Yes.
And a bit more, crayon style.
Yes. So the edges are not crisp and sharp. We have textures. We have almost, as Shumi said, like a traditional media feel to it, which is usually much easier to recreate in Photoshop, while Illustrator will look different. So if we go down to Illustrator, we can look for, let's say, that's an art direction, but there's an illustration project there as well. But let's just have a look at this one. I haven't seen these projects, so it's completely random, but I'm just picking here. But this is done in Illustrator and Photoshop. That's the two tools used. But I would say, as I can see, this was mainly done in Illustrator. It's the unique thing about vector illustration is that the edges are usually very sharp and crisp, and of course, because they are vector based, they can be used in any size, whatever you need. So they can be printed in really big sizes and they will still look great. So for example, when you worked on exhibition designs, Shumi, what was it useful to work with vectors?
Oh yes, definitely, because we were printing large scale and these are like 5-6 meters high. It's always better to go with vectors, so you don't have print issues, everything is clear. Whereas if you are using pixels or try and draw in things on Photoshop, it's not as crisp when it comes to printing.
Yes,
that's the main problem.
So we can see here another example. Again, it's a combination of Photoshop and Illustrator, and we can see that the sketches, the original sketches, maybe they were done in Photoshop, but then the final artwork is created in Illustrator. And I just would like to point out that it's working in Illustrator doesn't mean that you can't have texture and you can't have rough edges.
So if you just ask about textures, is it better to have it as pixel or vector?
So here's a really cool one. I just found this. This is also a recently published illustration. And you can see this was, I'm almost sure this is actually in Illustrator, but these type of edges can be recreated by using Illustrator as well. Even things like this where you have very heavy texture. So it's not always the perfectly clean and sharp edges that you can do in Illustrator. It's also possible to add textures to it. So this one was a little bit maybe not the best example. Let me just go into a few other ones here. Let me just check that one out. Again, this is Photoshop and Illustrator. So we can see that when you have a lot of texture like this, it might need to be in Photoshop, but Illustrator can be pushed to a point where you can still have something like this recreated fully in vectors. It might just be a little bit more tricky to do that. And you will need a stronger machine to work with that, because in Photoshop this could be a few layers, while in Illustrator you would have millions of vector objects just to create that grungy, rugged, textured look. So it's a little bit more, it needs a stronger machine to be able to do these type of things. So I don't want to go any deeper than that, but I want to make sure that you guys check out Behance Discover the Discover option based on creative tools, and you can even follow these galleries, and then you will have a better idea what creators around the world use these tools for, and you will see a lot of overlap again. So it's impossible to say like, okay, you use Photoshop for this, you use Illustrator for that, because there's always overlaps. And
definitely, and I think a lot of people ask questions such as which application is better to create business card or book covers. As you mentioned, I think you can use all three. It just depends on the type of artwork that you want to create.
Yes. So one quick like side note here. For example, with business cards, I find InDesign actually to be the best. You can again create the design in Illustrator if you want, but then to populate all the, let's say you have a list of employees, 100 people, 100 different people you have to create business cards for. You can create the front and the back of the business card in Illustrator. You can create the background and set up everything, but then in InDesign you should use data merge to pull to bring in all the data of the names, the job roles, the telephone numbers, the emails, and so on and so forth, which you can prepare first in a spreadsheet, and then using data merge in InDesign you can combine that spreadsheet with the InDesign file, and then you would get immediately 100 different business cards populated with all the details. So that is actually a good example of, even for a simple project like a business card, we might not need to use a certain application. We can use 3 applications or 2 applications combined. So that's a very common thing as well, that for almost every design project, you would probably use a bit of all of them. There will be one that is used most, but then you are combining and integrating these in your workflow. Is that a question?
So someone just asked, why does everyone use Mac?
Yeah, well, not everyone uses Mac. You worked recently somewhere that everyone uses PC.
As long as their computer is fast, I'm happy. Yes. It doesn't matter if it's a Mac or a PC. All the applications work perfectly fine in both.
Yes.
So it just really depends on your computer. And also there was, just a few more questions I just wanted to find out. Taran asked, I know Photoshop is good for designing website, but do I switch to Illustrator or Adobe XD?
Which is a better workflow. Yeah. Again, Adobe XD is probably the best tool right now to use for UX, which can be for websites and mobile devices. But the reason why it's good, because you can design and also prototype, so add the interactions and see them coming together, and you can show it to your clients as well. So it's a brilliant application, but it's still in a beta, so they're still developing it, and there's a lot of features missing, like you can't add GIFs or animations or videos to it just yet. And also there's a few things that I know that they're working on. So there's definitely reason to learn it and start using it for web design. But you shouldn't forget about Illustrator. So you can still use Illustrator for certain tasks and even Photoshop. And it should be like a testing thing that you need to check whether for your type of work, because even within web design, there's so many different styles for the type of work you do, whether that's the best tool, or maybe Muse. Adobe Muse is also great for not too complex websites, but Muse is a tool where you can have fully responsive sites created and even have parallax effects. And if you are interested, that's something that I have a course on. So in that one, actually, I explain a bit more which are the current tools and how you should use these tools for web design. So I have, at the moment, I think I have 18 courses on my website. So I have the link as well in the description. The one that I was talking about is the Parallax website design course. So here you can see it. That's the one on the right. No, actually, that was the slider design. But yeah, so what I wanted to say here is that the most important thing is that although these 3 applications can be used independently, most design projects you would also use them in combination. And to find the right amount of using them, that usually comes from experience, but that's also, once again, a good thing to start talking to creatives. So joining a live stream like this is a great place to find out more about how these products should be used. And my aim in the future is to show you as much as I can all kinds of different varied projects here in live on YouTube, and based on that you will see how I combine these applications and for what type of tasks you should use which application. Do you have another question?
There's a few piling up. We will try and go through them at the end of the session if possible.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Bishwich wants to know. Bishowich wants to know which is your favorite application.
So Jonathan Bisher, which one application
is your favorite?
Yeah, it's a good question. Which one is yours?
I like all of them. I can't choose. I'm sorry, but at the moment I love Illustrator because I'm learning to create patterns. But I used InDesign, but then I got bored of it for a while because I don't like working with so much text. But maybe I was mainly working in print. And then Photoshop, I love it for website. It really depends on the project.
Yeah, I also had like periods when I had a favorite, but at the moment I would say probably Illustrator for me. Illustrator has just so much depth that I still find out new ways of doing things, and probably my second favorite is InDesign, and Photoshop is actually the third one. I don't know, maybe it's just an overload. I've used it so much, and I worked on retouching projects for a long time, and I've used it a lot for all kinds of projects.
Yeah.
So I feel like Photoshop is mentioned everywhere, and InDesign and Illustrator doesn't get as much credit. So that's why I would say Illustrator is my favorite currently, InDesign second, and Photoshop is only third.
It's true, InDesign does all the hard work, but it doesn't get recognized.
Yes.
Illustrator is fun, it's really great, and I feel like I need to improve a lot on that, because there's so much to learn, and Photoshop is okay. I think, yeah, you go through your phases, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm not rude picking up my phone. I actually want to show you guys something. So I'm just going to put this on my screen. Let me just find the phone app. Should come up here. Just 1 second. Don't know why it's not coming up. I'm sharing so many things, so it might not work, but actually it should work. Just 1 second. The reason why I want to show my phone is because it's not coming up. I tested it just before again. It never works when I want it to work. Yeah, there you go. So the reason why I wanted to show you my phone for a second, the screen of my phone. Let me just switch to my actual screen so you can see it. So there you go. So you can see that on this side of I have several pages. Do we call these pages? No, screens.
Screens,
yeah. I have several screens, loads of apps on my phone. I try to organize them. You can see on this screen, I think all of these, apart from this, the tab at the bottom, all of them are Adobe apps. These are mobile apps, and they are all free. So if you guys have a smartphone and you haven't downloaded some of these, make sure you do, because they are great fun, and you can use them for free even if you are not a Creative Cloud user or subscriber. So the one that I use very often is Adobe Capture, which is almost like a camera that you just walk around the street, you can capture things and you can turn them into textures, brushes, and all kinds of things that you can later on use in the desktop applications. But then there's also Adobe Draw, which is like Illustrator on your phone or tablet. Of course, on the tablet it's a little bit easier, especially if you have an iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil. Shumi, you use that very often, right? You use Adobe Draw, right?
I love it.
Yeah. So she was just working today and yesterday on a really cool project. Can you just tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, I was just creating floral patterns for a quote poster. And I just found it a lot easier to directly draw on the iPad using Adobe Draw. It creates vectors for me. It just makes the work for a lot faster. Mm-hmm. And I honestly would recommend, if you can, download it on your phone or iPad and just give it a go.
Of course, for Android as well, these are all available. Adobe Draw, and then we have Photoshop Mix, Photoshop Fix, we have Adobe Sketch. Again, Adobe Photoshop Sketch is like using Photoshop for concept art or drawing in general. So you can start off doodling on your phone or tablet, and then it actually has a lot of functionality and really nicely integrates into the Creative Cloud workflows. So I'm not going to talk about this because, again, this is a huge topic. So I'm going to come back to this maybe in another stream. We could actually have a series of streams on the mobile apps, because they are just really amazing and you can do so many things with them. But we have a little bit of time left if we have any questions, and then I can really start on the project that I planned. So let me just show that while I get it ready here. So what I'm going to show you guys is, because it would be boring to just talk, so it's always good to see some action. So we will see Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. And let me just bring this up. I prepared this before. I just like this little animation here. The three product, so they are so excited and they can't wait to actually be put to use. So what I'm going to do in this project is to have the images that you see here and the elements that I prepared put together into an InDesign, or put together into a leaflet or like a flyer, or it's like an article about why is it good for climbing mountains. I found this article and I just extracted a bit of text from it. So we will be putting that together. And the images I'm using are free photos from Pixabay. If you guys haven't used it before, if you can just type it in there. Pixabay is a cool, really cool stock photo source, and all the photos are free there, and they are really high quality, amazing images. Like you can see this one as well is really nice, high resolution image. This one as well is 5,000 pixels, so great stuff to work with. And then we have some icons, which is another free source that I would recommend everyone to check out. It's the Noun project, if you can look for that as well and put it in the comments. So the Noun project even has a plugin or like an extension for all these three applications, Illustrator, InDesign and Photoshop. And I think that is a paid one. I'm not 100% sure. I pay for it. It's
paid.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
only
paid.
like $20 or $30 a year. But yeah, once you pay for it, you have a full year access to them. And you can see I have it here in Illustrator as a separate panel. So the Noun project is there together with the libraries, the CC libraries. So it's a brilliant one because all you have to do, if I want to just drag and drop in something, let's say if I type in mountain again or mountains, I can find all these icons and then I can just simply click and then it places it in straight away into my design. So that's just something I wanted to mention. So the project that I want to do here is to combine all these things together and try to create a nice pleasing page layout. So the main aim is to show you how all the three applications can work together hand in hand, and which part of the project is best done in which application. So once again, just the whole topic we talked about, now showing it in action.
Okay.
So are we ready? Are there any questions?
No, I think we can start.
Start.
We can say
Cool.
start, yeah.
All right. So here we are in InDesign, and I have this page wireframe set up where I have a blank frame on the top, and I have the title and then the text for the body copy. So that's extremely boring at the moment. Nothing's going on. So we have to liven this up a bit. So first of all, I'm going to bring in the text. So I have that RTF file here, and I'm just going to place this in. This is by Joshua Becker. He wrote this article. This is just an extract from that. So I'm going to select the copy, and I'm going to place it in here. So that is going to be our copy. And I am going to also bring in the title. So why everyone should climb a mountain. That's the title. So let's just place that in as well. Actually, if I place it in and keep it the original formatting, that's a useful shortcut when you copy and paste into InDesign. You should know that you have both paste and paste without formatting options. I just use paste without formatting, which means if you already have some design or like type set up in InDesign and you bring in copy from Word or RTF documents, paste without formatting means it will keep whatever you already have in InDesign and it just brings the copy and places it in. So it won't change the formatting. So that's quite useful. I use that right now, so it kept the formatting. But there's already one thing here that I would like to fix. And actually, one thing I wanted to also mention is that why do I start in InDesign? You don't actually need to start in InDesign, but if you know that it is a page layout, it's probably worth wireframing in InDesign. And wireframing, a lot of people mentions it as drawing wireframes on paper. I sometimes do my wireframing already in InDesign. I know that some designers would say that, oh, you shouldn't start in InDesign, you should always sketch. That's great, but if you are confident in setting things up and if you have already an idea, there's actually no harm in doing your wireframe in InDesign. So I know I will have an image on the top, I know I will have my title, I know I will have my body copy, so I can have these frames prepared in InDesign already in the actual size, and that is my wireframe. That's the skeleton which I'm going to build upon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think always, personally, I always sketch in my head first. I always have an idea on my head, and then I can just jump into whichever application and do quick wireframing.
Yeah.
Mock-ups. But yeah, you should usually have an idea in your head. If not, I do think it's important to also sketch.
Yeah, sketching is great, but I'm just saying that it's not like a must. You don't have to always do a sketch before, and it's not like a rigid workflow you need to follow. So it really depends. Planning is important. So planning is of course important, and whatever way you use for planning is good. So now that I have this, I'm just switching back to Bridge. By the way, I'm using Command Tab or it's Alt Tab on PC to switch between the applications when you see them coming up as icons like that. So it's a quick way of switching between them. So I switch back to Bridge, which is the file management application. And from here, I'm going to just use this image, the panorama image. But instead of just having it placed in, as it is, I would like to actually place or combine it with this hot air balloon image. So I would like to combine the two together. So let me just open up first of all this in Photoshop. So that's the image. I actually took this photo in Austria 2 years ago, I think, in the summer. It's a beautiful place. The mountain in the background is called Dachstein. If you guys ever get the chance to go there, make sure you visit. Is there anyone here from Austria, by the way? Let's see if we have any Austrians watching today. Maybe there's someone from this region. So let me just go back and open up this other image as well with the balloon. And what I'm going to do is to combine these two images together. So if I want to, I can see a good question here. What's a good site for free vector images? What was that site that we used
there's
a lot?
Free Pick. I will link them now. I will find them for you. But some of them are paid, but you can use for free, but you just have to reference it.
Yeah, but Free Pick is a good place to start.
Free Pick is a really good one.
And guys, feel free to share as well if you have any good suggestions.
I think earlier on someone shared pixels.com.
I don't know.
Yeah, I checked it out. Thanks for sharing.
That's nice.
And I would definitely use it.
Cool.
It was Taron, I think. Yeah.
Patrick is from Germany. Close. Not close enough, but close. And there's also Victor from Nigeria. That's slightly further away.
Yeah.
Moshin from Morocco. Did I spell that right, do you think? Moshin. I'm not sure. Cool. So let's crack on with this. So just to show you guys, if I want to place two images together, I can switch on to the view or window menu, arrange tile or vertically option, which means that I can see my two or multiple images together in Photoshop. And then using the move tool, I can drag and drop an image over another one. It's a very basic thing, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. So we are creating a simple composite right now. So we are going to prepare this image that can go into our leaflet. And of course, we are using Photoshop for photo manipulation and combining images together. So what I'm going to do here is to use now the Magic Wand tool. And with that, I can click on the background. If I shift click, I can select more details from the background. And that selected pretty much all the sky. If I now want to extract the balloon, first I'm going to go to the select menu and choose inverse, which now will select only the balloon. And then if I click on the mask icon, which is this rectangle here on the bottom right corner, so I call it the Japanese flag. If I click on that, that will create exactly what we needed. So we masked out the balloon from its original background. So we remove that. And to make sure that I can work with this image, I will also do another very important step. I right click on the layer and I choose Convert to Smart Object. The reason I do that is because then if I use the free transform tool, which is Command T or Control T, and resize this image, I can make it really small let's say I want to put it somewhere there in the background. But then if I change my mind and I want to make it big again, using free transform again, I can increase its size once more, and you will see that there's no harm done to the image. So the quality is still the same as it was originally. When I press, just show you guys, if you haven't used free transform before, it's under edit menu. And then when you use a smart object, the free transform even tells you exactly how big this is compared to the original size. So as long as you keep it under 100% here on the top in the options bar, that means you are safe to work with that layer, so it's not going to pixelate. It's always good to save the smart object before you start resizing, so keep it as big as possible, save it as a smart object, and then you can start resizing it. And when I use free transform, I hold down the Alt and Shift keys together and drag one of the corner points to make sure it resizes it and keeps it proportions, plus also resizing to the center point. So I can make it smaller and put it somewhere there in the background. Where do you think, Shumi, we should put that?
Oh God.
Is that okay then?
I don't think it should be in center. Yeah, just move it a bit.
Move it a bit.
No, it gets lost.
Yes, well done.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah, so the reason I placed it here is, first of all, I wanted to create a nice movement. And the way I can show movement is that I put the balloon exactly between the mountains and the sky, so it leads the viewer's eye from the sky into the foreground, or vice versa. So it creates like a link between the background, the sky, and the foreground. And I also placed it there because I can see that there's the highest contrast that I can achieve, so it really stands out from the background. And if I were to place it somewhere here, it would get lost. And another important thing, I don't know if maybe someone already mentioned it in the comments, I haven't been checking it, I can see, need some reflection on the sea. Well done. What I would do is, normally I would use a plugin for this, but I'm just going to show you quickly a fast way of doing a reflection. I would Alt click and drag on the balloon to create a duplicate. So you can see in my layers panel as well, then I have two of them. And then I am going to use the layer option, edit option, transform, flip vertical. I have a shortcut for it, that's why I find it hard to get the option up. I normally just use my custom shortcut for it. So when I flipped it around, I can now zoom a little bit closer just so we can see what happens. I can now change the blend mode of this, probably to overlay. Maybe not overlay, let's just see, maybe screen, and then reduce the opacity so it blends a little bit better in there. Do you think that's quite good reflection?
Yeah, it looks good. It's a bit big. No.
It's the same size as the other one. Well, reflections, depends where you look at it, can be bigger or smaller or more stretched or not. It depends on your viewing angle, but I'm not going to go into details on that. For now, I think it's fine. One quick thing about water, we could use a more complex technique to create the ripples and the waves in the water. But what I would use for that, because it's a smart object, I can go into the filter menu and choose liquify. And with liquify, if I zoom again closer, we could use the tool, the first tool as well, or any of these tools to be honest, but the forward warp tool is fine. With that, we can just stretch along the edges a bit, just to create a little bit of waves around there. So I could use my tablet for this, but I guess you guys can see it, that it creates the illusion, and even here in the middle we can just have a little bit of waves going around. So when I accept this, you can see it looks more like water, more natural. We can have the opacity a bit higher up. And the cool thing about working with smart objects is that the liquify becomes a smart filter, which I can turn off if I want. So I can show you before liquify and with liquify. So that was just a cool little addition there, which we added. But now that we are ready, we have our layers and we work completely non-destructively. So if I wanted to move the balloon, I could now select the reflection and the balloon itself and move them together around. And we can see that we could even create an animation. Shall we do an animation?
Yeah, someone asked, can you do basic animation in Photoshop? I was going to ask that question later on. But yeah, you can try and do that.
So let's say the balloon, we want it to fly from left to right, or it could fly from it could just go up in the sky. So if we want to do that, I can start maybe from somewhere here, and then I will go to the window menu and choose timeline. So Photoshop is not a video, not primarily used for video and animation, but it supports it using the timeline panel. You can create two types of animations, video animation and frame animation. Now frame is like GIFs, and video is similar to Premiere or After Effects, which will use all your layers as separate elements that you can animate. So if I choose create video timeline, I will see my layers there, and all I have to do is to open up these layers. So I'm just going to call this one, let's just put this on the top, this is going to be my balloon, and this is the reflection like that. And I'm going to make my thumbnails a bit bigger so you guys can see it better. So these are the three layers that I have. And because the background is logged, it doesn't show up here in the timeline, but I have my balloon and and its reflection, and what I will do is to lock or add what do we call this keyframe to the transform option. So let's lock both of them in this point, and then if I go further in the timeline, let's say 3 seconds later, I can now select the balloon and move it up maybe around there, and select the reflection as well and move it slightly down there. So notice how in the timeline immediately we got the little keyframe created at that point, meaning that Photoshop will be able to connect these two positions and creates the animation. So if I now go back and press space, you can already see it on my screen that it starts to animate it. So there's the play button, and it won't be able to give us a really nice detailed view first because it has to render it, and because I am streaming at the same time, my computer is really struggling with this. Normally it would be a bit faster, but because it's also a high resolution image, it takes longer to render. But once I see that green line showing up, that means that those are rendered frames. And then if I now stop this and go back to the beginning, let's play it now. It looks a little bit better, so we can see a bit more continuous movement there. So that is something that we would be able to now export from Photoshop using the export option here and save it as a video file. So you have to render the video, and then it will give you a couple of options. Again, it just takes some time to come up. And then you can see that we have QuickTime, we have MP4 and DPX options that you can choose from. And you can also set it up exactly how you want it. So there's different quality options for like the H.264, which is the MP4 format. You can find loads of options. So you can choose HD and so on and so forth. You can even find the YouTube and Vimeo standards here. So it's a really cool thing that you can do in Photoshop. But I actually wanted this to be used in a leaflet. Can we use this animation in our printed leaflet?
No.
Not yet. Although you've seen something.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I can't remember, but there was a printed brochure with a video that you could play. So
it was like almost paper, but thick paper.
It was a thick paper.
And there was a screen inside it.
There was a screen inside, yes.
So how cool is that?
So and that might be a new thing in the future. But yeah, for now, no. Most of
it must be very expensive. But if it's already out there, then hopefully we will see that more often. And then things like this, you can see how quick it was to set up that balloon moving. And imagine getting a flyer where the balloon starts moving, and maybe even interact with the user. So by the user clicking on the balloon, it starts moving, and so on and so forth. So everything is about motion, by the way. That's the biggest tip of the day, and I'm going to keep mentioning this, that everything has to move. That's the current trend, and I don't think it's going to change for a good couple of years. This is going to be the trend. So whoever is planning to get into motion design, you are on the right track. We are also learning more about it because we are not specialized in it, but we are doing, I do UX projects where I have to do animations. Shumi is also doing motion design.
But yeah, it's in demand. Most companies or agencies that you go into would like a brochure, would like a website, and would prefer to have a video animation.
Yes.
It's those three things are great for marketing purposes, and if you want to enhance in this field, it's definitely something that you could try and learn at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. So what I'm going to do is to save this as a Photoshop file. Saving it into the native file format of Photoshop means that it will be available. All the things that you do in Photoshop, including your non-destructive editing, including even your timeline, everything will be available later on to come back to. But having it saved as a PSD, we can also use it in InDesign directly. So if I go back to InDesign now, I will select that frame on the top, and I will use the shortcut Command or Control D to open up the place option, and I will just find this file from my desktop. So there's the PSD file, panorama, and place it in. So this feature was, by the way, the file place option. That's the one I used, and I just have to make sure that there's no fill color on this image. And why is it not showing up? There you go. So what I used here is the fill frame proportionally icon from the options bar to get it in place. Now that looks quite nice, I think, for the top. And what I want to do also is to have the title a little bit nicer. So first of all, I will select this frame and press Command or Control B on the keyboard to get to the text frame options, and I will choose Align Center. That will keep the text centered within the box, so then I can set it like this, so it vertically centralizes it. But then I will press the T key to have the type tool coming up, and then here in the options bar I can also use Align Center. So now horizontally it's also centered. So now if I change anything on this text frame, you can see that the text will always stay in the middle. Now this font is the Arial font. It's a very boring font, so let's just change it. Do you have a suggestion what font we should use for hiking?
Oh gosh, our usual favorite font.
Behance. Yeah, I have
Futura or Din. These are our favorite, and I always go to them all the time.
Yeah. So in the Creative Cloud applications, the type or font selector has the option since CC. We have the little favorite icon, the star, with which you can very quickly filter for your favorite fonts. So let's just see Behance, how it looks. I actually have Behance more options. Do you have this set, the 5 different Behance?
No, actually, I only have the bold. I need to nick it from you.
Yeah. I think this is, I'm not sure if it's a Typekit font. No, it's actually not even a Typekit. This is free. So it has 5 different weights. We have the thin, very thin, and then we have the stronger ones, but I think the light one looks quite nice. Maybe regular, so a little bit more weight on it, which it's called book. So I'm going to use on the climb a mountain, maybe a bold, just to bring that out a bit more. And I am not sure whether we need this black background. I just wanted to show that you can align text within a frame, but I'm going to take it off, and there's another shortcut for that. You just press the / or question mark button on the keyboard, and with that you can remove a color. But because the text was white, we just have to select that and set it to whatever color we need, like black in this case. Another useful shortcut in InDesign is pressing W, with which you can hide all the outlines and see a preview of how it will look in print. So I can use W to switch back and forth. So it's getting there, but normally the font that I use for the body copy would be something that's very easy to read, while the text on the title is fine. I mean, Behance is good for that. I would never use Behance for the actual copy. It's always good to think of how you are pairing your fonts. So never use all caps fonts for body copy. So it works fine for headings and titles, but it shouldn't be used on body copy. So for the body copy, I am going to probably use, let's just say Jill Sun. That's quite nice. What do you think, Jill Sun? Or shall we use...
Or lighter. It just looks quite bold to me.
Something like that?
Yeah, it was just too bold.
Yeah. So when you set your type on copy, you have to be careful, as Shumi mentioned, that you have to look at the density of text. If it's too dense, again, it's going to be hard to read. So you want to make it easy to read, comfortable for your readers. And there's another
for print, if you are printing it.
Yeah, of course. And there's another thing, that you shouldn't have too long lines. So if your lines are too long, that's again not too convenient to read. So sometimes if you just make your lines a little bit shorter, it's going to be easier to read them. You can always align your text in the center if you wanted to. Let's have a look. It's a short article, so it's not much text, but we have space both at the bottom and in the center. Although I want to keep negative space, I would like to have another image at the bottom. What do you think? That would be quite nice to have something at the bottom as well, right?
Just so smaller.
A smaller, like something in the corner. Yeah. So what I thought of is to use this other image. Where is it? This one with this girl. And I'm going to open this up in Photoshop once again. So starting in Photoshop. And what I thought is removing the background without keep the trees and the girl and the ground, and just remove the sea and the sky. So in this case, I'm going to use another selection tool, the quick selection, with which I can draw over areas quickly, and then we will be able to remove them. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time refining this, but I will make sure that we include that part between the legs. And then this part here, maybe I can also remove, something like that. Now, if I click on the mask, actually, before we click on the mask, I am going to inverse my selection again. So select inverse and then click on the mask. But by the way, if you create your mask and you forgot to do the inverse option, you can always press Command I or Control I to inverse the mask. So what happens, if I alt click on the mask, you can see white shows, black hides, but by using the invert option, I can invert the colors, and whatever is black will be hidden, whatever is white will be visible. So I have this cut out, and obviously the edges are not great. So what I will do is to double click on the mask icon, which takes me into the selection, I think it's called Refine Edge view. I can't even actually remember the name of this feature because they renamed it recently. Select and mask, that's the name of the feature. So double clicking on your mask gets you to this point, and what you can do is to increase the edge detection and maybe also turn on smart radius, and that should help you to get the edges better. But what I like to do is also to draw around the edges. Now, I'm not sure whether I want to do that in this case, so I just wanted to point out that you can always come here to refine the edges. I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's just a very simple detail. But what's important is that I'm going to save this as a Photoshop file again. So let's save it as a Photoshop file and then bring it into InDesign. So I use the Command D or Control D to place it in, and there is my Photoshop file. So I'm going to place it in like so, and I am not sure whether we need the trees to be visible as well, but what I was planning to do is a little bit of a trick here. All right, so we will need to have her standing somewhere around here. So we need to probably extend the ground a bit. So if I Alt double click on this in InDesign, holding down the Alt key and double click, that takes us back to Photoshop. In Photoshop, what I will do is to get rid of the trees. I actually decided not to have the trees here. Okay, holding, selecting that part, selecting the mask, and using Control backspace or Alt backspace, I can hide by filling in with black or white. But the same thing would happen if I use my brush tool and I just draw over with black the selection. So that way I can hide it. If I draw with white, I can reveal again.
And that's probably the best way why you shouldn't delete your mask.
Yes, yeah, you should never delete. You should always mask and keep your mask intact. Shift clicking on the mask, you can even show the original image so it never gets lost. And another thing that I wanted to have is, probably we will invert this image, but let's just save it for now. So I save it, come back to InDesign, and because we did the Alt double click, it's already updated here. So it's cut the trees off. So if I want to invert, just flip it horizontally, I can click on this icon up here, the flip horizontal option, with which I will have the girl on the opposite side. But yeah, I still have the problem. I want her to actually look at the text. So once again, I Alt double click here, select the girl, and I just want the girl to be swapped around. So what I will do is I will have the girl separated from the original one. So I will first of all have a smart object created from this whole thing and duplicate that. It's a little bit more complex now because what I will do is separate these two from each other. So have a version in which we have the girl, and then I will have a version in which we don't have the girl. So let me just get a selection and mask that out. So we can now see that I can move the girl freely. I was going a little bit fast here, so don't worry guys. If you want to learn more about Photoshop, I have a really extensive course, the Photoshop Masterclass. And if you like what I'm doing here, I explain every step, what I'm showing here, and much more in that. It's a 12-hour course, structured, explaining from the beginning to more complex techniques. But I'm sure there's people here who are much more advanced and would be able to do this even faster than me. But what I wanted to do is to have the girl standing maybe something like that. Maybe move her down a bit, something like that. And then I save this, go back to InDesign, and then it should update here. And we just have to put it back to the way it was. Okay, so she's standing there. Maybe we can make her a little bit smaller. And actually, it's probably the other way around was better. Move it down, move it down. Something like that. Mm-hmm. So, do you know why I have her?
You're going to do a text wrap.
Yes, you know me too well. So what I'm going to do is to use text wrap on this image. So I will select the Photoshop file, and the shortcut to get to text wrap is Control-Alt-W or Command-Alt-W, which will bring up this panel. And having the image selected, all you have to do, as long as it's a PSD file with transparency, which thanks to the masking we have, you just have to click on this icon, the wrap around object shape. And with that, it should work, but you have to also make sure that you have the alpha channel selected. And that way it creates an outline around your alpha channel, meaning that the text won't go over the girl, and you can even keep the text further away from the girl, so creating a safe zone around it. So that's a quite nice little touch. And the reason why I have the girl on the right side and not on the left, because we have a left aligned text. And with left aligned text, you don't really want to mess up your left edge. So that nice clean edge can stay the way it is. And we only messed up the edge on the right side. But one thing I noticed that I have a little bit of something left over here in the image, which we can find probably on this layer. Is it that layer? Let me just double check. No, it's yeah, it's something up there, which is weird. Is it there?
It's gone.
Is it gone?
Yeah,
okay, cool. So let's just save this. And if we come back to InDesign, hopefully that will disappear.
Still there.
It's still there. All right, no problem. We just crop it with the frame.
Easier that way.
Yeah, just save a bit of time. And then what I want to make sure is this text doesn't have hyphens. So I will use Command Alt Shift H or Control Alt Shift H to remove the hyphens. And I don't like to have things like the first letter of a sentence starting with I being at the end of a line. So I'm going to press Shift Enter just to bring that down, just to refine the copy a little bit. And then maybe we can have this part of the text, the last sentence, aligned to the right. That's Command Shift R or Control Shift R to align it there. So it's looking a little bit better already. I mean, again, a little bit more interesting. And we can maybe have one last thing here, maybe an icon, because we haven't used Illustrator. So let's not forget about Illustrator. This was very heavy on Photoshop and InDesign, but we haven't used Illustrator just yet. So what I want is to represent what hiking is about and create like a little set of icons, almost to create like a logo for this article. So if I switch to Illustrator, I have these couple of elements already here from Noun Project. And what I'm going to do is to create a little composition of this. So hiking obviously is little man walking with the stick and the backpack. And by the way, with vector graphics, the big advantage is that it never gets pixelated. So we can zoom in as far as we want. It never gets pixelated. So let's just grab the little man, and I'm going to make this smaller. So let's just resize and make it smaller. Then let's just grab the boots as well, another one. And I think I need to turn on my bounding box. It was turned off, yeah. So there's the boots, and then mountain, probably we can put at the bottom because it's more triangular, so it fits in a little bit better there. And then we have the backpack on the left. All right. Are there any questions in the meantime that I should?
They just find there is Winter Frog wants to know where he can find your Illustrator courses.
Yes, in the link underneath in the description, you should see that we have a link to my courses. So the courses.yesimadesigner.com, where I say check out my online design courses. That's the one. But maybe Shumi, you can just put the link in again. So that's where my courses are. A cool thing that I have is that you can subscribe to my courses. So you not only get access to Illustrator, but you get access for a month for all of my courses for $19. So if you guys are interested in that, you can check that out.
And you have Photoshop. Rakesh would like to learn Photoshop from beginning.
Yes, I have Photoshop Masterclass, which goes through all from very beginning to very complex workflows, much more complex than what you see here, but starting completely from scratch. I call it the Zero to Hero course. And Illustrator as well, same thing. So Masterclass, if you want to buy the course, you can buy it individually, each of these, or you can buy them or pay subscription fee per month, and then you get access to all of my courses. And by the way, just a news about my courses is that the InDesign Masterclass is almost ready. So that's has been in the works for months, and it's a massive course again. Covers everything you need to know about InDesign, similarly to the other two masterclasses. That should be released by the end of this month. So whoever is subscribing now will have automatically access once that course is released, and actually will have early access to it, because subscribers get early access to my new courses. So I just did a very quick little simple design here. I will just simply copy this. So I selected it, copy it, and move it into InDesign, paste, simple as that. And InDesign is smart enough to keep this as vectors, so I can now make it smaller and I can place it somewhere here. I think we can make our text a little bit closer, just changing the leading. Alt up and down arrow, by the way, is the shortcut to change leading. And I can move things a little bit down. Maybe this whole thing can go down. Something like that. And then we can also have, what do you think about this, Shumi? If we have like a half a circle here and then move the logo over it. Because if I just put it like this, it's hard to see it.
I just feel like the stroke is so thick on the left one. I can't even tell. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. That's actually because, well spotted. That is because I didn't outline this. So if I just outline this or expand it, I can choose object expand. Now I can just use the pathfinder. I had to add a little bit of thickness on that, but because we moved it into Photoshop, it started to get messed up. So I'm just going to join them together and then copy over again.
Rahul wants to know, can you copy and paste from one software to another?
Yeah, that's what I just do here. From InDesign to Illustrator, I just copy pasted, and it's not always the best technique because it won't allow you to alt double click on this item and get back to Illustrator and make your edits, but it will allow you to select them individually still. So if it was a group, you can still select them individually and move them around. So it's almost like starting something in Illustrator and continue to work on it in Photoshop. And by the way, I don't know if you guys know this, but in InDesign, if you have Photoshop file, you can right click on it and choose Object Layer Options. And then you can actually see your layers. So if you decide not to see the balloon, you can just turn off both the reflection and the balloon. And I didn't even have to go back to do that. I mean, go back to Photoshop to do this. I could do it directly here in InDesign. So there is a reason why I think of InDesign as being like the boss or like the hub where you do everything. And Photoshop and Illustrator is serving InDesign. So it prepares things and then InDesign puts things together most of the time. So let me just draw quickly a circle here. Do you think the circle will be good?
I think it will look really nice.
Okay, so let's just put a white fill in there. And we are almost done. Let's just have this slightly smaller. And then we can move this one up a bit. Maybe smaller circle. Or maybe what if we have a triangle, or is that too big? Like a
just test it out. It's all about testing out.
Yeah, so I can have a duplicate, alt click and drag, and just remove the circle, and instead I'm going to use a triangle. You can draw a triangle with the polygon tool in InDesign. If you just click, you can type in how many sides you want, and then you don't want star inset, so I will just set that to 50. So that should be, actually I still had the star inset. We need to set that to, I think 0. Is it 0? Yeah, that's it. So we have our triangle, and then I'm going to change this to white fill and no stroke. I remove the stroke from it and align it behind the other design element, just stretch it out a bit. I think that works better because it looks like a mountain.
Yeah.
So again, it just resembles the whole theme a bit more. So yeah, it's always good to test things out. And I'm just going to group these together and align them in the middle, relying on my guides. Cool. So if I press, first of all, Control S or Command S to save your work. And then Shift W, not Control Command W, that would close it. Shift W is the presentation view, which will give you a full screen view of your design. So once again, I think that was 45 minutes from start to finish. Half of the stream spent on our design project, half of it was theory. So hopefully it was both useful.
And now some questions.
Yeah, just before we get to the questions, I want to make sure that the whole concept here made sense. So just to summarize what I've done, I used all three applications, Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, in a seamless, integrated workflow, using all the non-destructive techniques like smart objects, masking, using text wrap in InDesign, using Illustrator vector artwork, bring it into InDesign while still keeping it vectors. So you can see how these three applications can work hand in hand and form a united team. So it's really all about team play. So whenever someone asks which one is the best tool for using a graphic design job, Probably the best answer is that it's a combination of all three of them. So that's like the main thing I wanted to get to. So although it's important to learn which tool to use when, most of the projects we work on, I would say like 90% of the projects, wouldn't be restricted to one application. It would always be a combination of the three, but maybe the balance is shifting. So sometimes Illustrator is more
depending on what you do.
Depending on the project you are working on. Cool. So let's have a look at the questions.
Yeah, sorry I didn't get the chance to answer these because I didn't actually know myself. Rivan wants to know, how do you know if a phone is downloaded or a default?
How do I know if what?
A font is downloaded or is a default font.
Okay, so you can't actually see that. You can't actually see it once it's used in Photoshop, Illustrator, in InDesign, whether you have whether it's a free font or whether it's licensed. The only thing that is 100% licensed is if you are using Creative Cloud, and when you look at your type, the font selector, and you choose the typekit option. So if you filter for typekit fonts, these are all licensed fonts. So as a Creative Cloud user, you have, I think, 100 fonts you can synchronize from typekit and use both for print and web. Some of them might be only available for print or web, but these are the ones that you definitely know that they are coming from your licensed source. While other fonts, you won't be able to tell whether you have the license or whether someone gave it to you. So you have to be careful to keep in mind and keep track of your fonts. I use an application to organize my fonts. It's called Font Explorer. I'm not sure whether this is available for PC, but on Mac this is a very good application, and here I can even keep track of projects like Nickelodeon I worked on recently. I have the fonts saved for that project, so I know exactly which ones I bought and licensed for that project. So then my client, in that case Viacom or Nickelodeon, they also knew which ones I worked with.
That's a good point. I didn't know either, so it's really helpful. Also, Sophia would like to know if you can do a course on portfolio review. Perhaps you can just mention the review we have coming up.
Yes, so I am doing a portfolio review in October, a live portfolio review in Bournemouth, UK. Obviously, this is a localized review that will only be available to whoever is in the area. So this is on the 26th of October. And if you look for Behance portfolio reviews, you will find it. So once again, it's organized by assignment designer, and we will have some reviewers. If you guys follow my courses, you might know Almu. She's going to come. She's a concept artist. She's going to be one of the reviewers. You will be there as well, I'm sure. Emily will be there as well. So that's a cool event to meet us. But we are also planning to do one in London, hopefully not too far ahead. That won't be an official Behance review, but that will be something that I'm planning to do on a regular basis. But what I'm going to do most likely is a stream like this, where we can review people's work. So you can just send me your portfolio links, and then we can go through your work. Shumi can join me.
Really good.
Maybe we can have Emily as well. So the three of us can almost like a board can look at the portfolios.
Good.
So yeah, that's a good point. We will do that online.
Also, I think Francis Irene asked earlier on, is InDesign from PageMaker? Did it come from PageMaker?
Yes, that was the original one. So I think PageMaker was removed completely, and then InDesign is the one. The InDesign is the descendant of it.
I think Martin wants to also get certification in Photoshop in Russia. Do you have any advice on how he can?
Yes.
Do that?
So what you need to look for is an ACE certification or AC. Oh yeah, I can see you said ACA. As I understand rightly, it is necessary to get the certificate from Adobe ACA. Yeah. So there's two types of certifications. There's the Adobe Certified Associate, which is the ACA, and then the Adobe Certified Expert, ACE, that's the higher level. Both of these you can get from Adobe proctored, exam centers. The ACA, I think now both of them are done through Certiport.
Okay.
Certiport can do both of these levels. It used to be Pearson VUE for ACE, but it's Certiport. If you just search for Certiport, you can include that link in there. That's the best place to look for an exam center where you need to go in and do the exam. If you want, you can do the ACE straight away, or you can start with the ACA. If you want to find out more about exams, again, my courses can help you on that. I actually have a Photoshop exam preparation course, and I'm working on the Illustrator ACE preparation and InDesign ACE preparation course as well.
Mohsin doesn't like your ground masking, Martin.
Yes, it's ugly. I know. I'm really sorry.
Obviously, that was a quick mock-up.
I could refine that very quickly, but it was just a quick mock-up.
Another question was, Martin Rosican wants to know if you can do stream on data merge.
Can you give a stream on data merge?
Please.
I might upload a video on my YouTube channel, because I have a video in the new upcoming InDesign Masterclass course. So one of the videos is on data merge, so I explain it quite well. I think I would just upload that video as a teaser for the course itself, and then hopefully that will be useful for not only her but also others. So that you can expect soon.
Cool. And just to wrap up things, final question. I'm not sure what Coral Draw is. A lot of people did ask, is that still a thing, or what's better, Illustrator or Coral?
Coral Draw. Of course it is still a thing, and it is the biggest competitor of Illustrator. It has been around, I think, even longer than Illustrator, or maybe roughly around the same time. And actually, because we have the balloon here, the Coral Draw's icon is the hot air balloon. So maybe that's what brought up the question. But so it's still around, but unfortunately for Coral, they are losing ground against Adobe, because Adobe is everywhere, and it's hard to keep up with the way Adobe is moving ahead. They probably now took over the industry completely throughout all divisions. So in video production as well, Adobe is probably the main tool. In photography, in illustration, everywhere. Coral is, I think, cheaper, and it's still a professional tool, but it probably won't give you as much options as Illustrator, although some things might be easier in Coral. So I'm not against it. I haven't actually used it much, so I can't really say. What I use quite often is Coral Painter. They have a really cool traditional media painting, digital painting application, which is actually better for digital painting than Photoshop. So that's a more specialized software, which I can recommend for everyone to check out. So Coral Painter is still cool. All right, so I think we went through everything. Once again, what I would like to make sure that I just want to mention again is that you can see the link in the description below to my Patreon site. I already shared all these files that I used today. So if you want to practice and recreate this using the 3 applications, you will find all the assets that you can use. And you can also download the PDF that I use for the presentation. What you need to have is sponsoring me on Patreon to get these files. Or if you subscribe to my courses, you will get all of these files through the subscription. So it's up to you whether you want to support me on Patreon, or you want to actually learn from my courses. Then come to courses.yasamedesigner.com. So that's all I wanted to show today. Do you have anything to add?
I think a lot of people did want to have like a PDF with free resources, vectors, something we can put together for them, I guess.
There's actually a PDF on my site, so I can just show that very quickly.
And also the keyboard shortcuts, if you can just show them as well.
Yes. So I'm just going to show this very quickly. So on my site, yesimadesigner.com, you will be able to find some useful resources on the right side. So on this side here, where it says Designer's Kit, you will find keyboard shortcuts, design terms, useful websites, designer skills, and even a collection of image file formats. So these are all things that you can... Oh, actually, sorry, it's not shared. So on yesimadesigner.com, I'm on the main page, and it's here on the right side under Designer's Kit. So that's where you can download. These are free PDFs. Let me just show you the useful websites. This is how it looks. So it's collected. Some links might not work anymore because I've done this 2 years ago, I think, the last time I updated it. So I might need to look into updating it. But this is still probably 90% of this still is available, and it's a useful collection of resources. Cool. So anything to add? No, all good. So thank you guys so much for joining us today, and hopefully we will be able to do this now every week as I usually or as I planned originally. So Sunday at 5 o'clock GMT or London time, we are going to come back and talk about design. I'm not sure next week that timing will work, so I might need to shift it slightly. Maybe we need to do it on Monday, but I will try to keep doing it every week. Maybe sometimes we have to just shift the time around, and expect also videos to be uploaded to my YouTube channel in between these live streams. So I have lots of content prepared, and the big course is coming up. The InDesign course will be soon available to watch. And once again, thanks a lot for joining us today, and see you guys next time.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for staying till the end. I hope you found this video useful. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, as I'm adding similar content regularly. If you are interested in learning more from me, you should probably check out my comprehensive training courses on my site. I have more than 200 hours of video training from beginner to expert levels, with lots of exercises, quizzes, and resources to help you develop your skills and become a professional designer. Just click on this link and create an account to start your free trial. Thanks again for joining me today, and I hope to see you in the next one.